So first of all, Singapore and Hong Kong are generally not good for most digital nomads anymore. And I'll tell you why. There's a couple of reasons. And I'm grouping them together because they're very, very similar now in the way they deal with things. So first of all, to open a bank account for a Singapore or a Hong Kong company, you need to be a resident of Singapore or Hong Kong. Like you need to actually be a resident there. So unless you actually live there, what you'll end up having to do is hire someone to be a director of your company who has legal authority in your company, who has legal authority over your bank account. So if you want to go open a company in Singapore, but you don't live there, so that raises your costs. You got to hire somebody who lives in Singapore. Now, there are services that offer that. Like, I'm not saying it's not an impossible thing. Like, you're not walking down the street in Singapore randomly going, hey, you want to be a director of my company? Like, there are services that do that for you, but it raises the cost because you have to pay them a director fee. You have to pay them fees to deal with your bank account. And you are exposing your bank to another human being that in reality doesn't have any real activity within your business. So that's one downside to it. Used to, you could, like, let's say 10 years ago, you could open a Hong Kong company and open a bank account at HSBC and not live there. It was no big deal, but that's not really possible anymore. The other downside is for both of those jurisdictions, the banks themselves don't like if you're not doing business predominantly in Asia. So for years, a go-to thing for people who were doing like e-commerce, like Amazon stores in the US. And so they would open a Hong Kong company with a bank account at like HSBC or something like that. And they were linking their Hong Kong company and HSBC account to their Amazon seller account, and they would receive all their funds. So they were, first of all, that was a big gray area thing anyway, because technically if you're selling products in the US, you have a US tax obligation, regardless of where your company is registered. So technically, if you were doing that in the past, your Hong Kong company should have been filing a tax return in the US, but nobody did that. So they were doing that because at the time you could do that. It was possible because it was a loophole people were taking advantage of. It was a very, let's go back to the grayscale. Let's say that was on the upper shadier range of the grayscale, but you could do that and get away with it. But what has happened since is those banks are now saying, if you're not doing business predominantly in Asia, we're just going to close your accounts. So I had a client, this has been a few years now, probably 3 or 4 years ago, but he was doing exactly this. He was doing e-commerce. He had a Hong Kong company. He had a bank account. They sent him a letter saying, we're closing your bank account because all of your business is coming from U.S. banks. Like all of his money was incoming from U.S. banks. Most all of his money outgoing was going back to the U.S. And so he wasn't doing business actually in Asia, just had a Hong Kong company. The bank sent him a letter saying, we're closing your accounts. You've got 30 days to move your money out. Here's the problem. He had a Hong Kong company. You can't just easily go to another country and open a bank account for a Hong Kong company, because especially nowadays, unless you're like a big multinational, but if you open a bank account in a country, you need your company registered in the same country or in the region where your bank account is. He tried to open bank accounts in multiple countries and he kept getting shut down. Like, no, you can't. I mean, you have a Hong Kong company. Go to Hong Kong and open your bank account. He couldn't do it because nobody wanted him. His bank would only send the money to a bank account in his company name. That presents a major problem. Major problem. He could only send the money to a bank account in the company name, but no one else wanted to open a bank account for him. And he had a lot of money in there. Like it was 7 figures. And he ended up having to go to Hong Kong and hire a law firm, like a big corporate law firm, to go fight this with the bank. And he paid, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars fighting this. And ultimately, we ended up registering a Wyoming LLC for him. He got a court order to allow the bank to send the money to his Wyoming LLC's bank account. But he spent he had to go there. He spent tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees to do that. And so it doesn't make sense if you're not, like, it could make sense. Don't get me wrong. I still think Singapore and Hong Kong are viable solutions if you're doing business in Asia. I think it's a great solution if you're doing business in Asia. If most of your incoming or your inflow or outflow of money is from Asian markets, I think it's a good option, and it's a viable solution to go there and hire a local director, because it is a tax optimized situation. But I will also say Singapore and Hong Kong are both cracking down. They used to make it really easy. If all your money came from non-Hong Kong or non-Sing sources, you didn't pay tax. But now they changed the definition on what it means to earn money in those jurisdictions now. So they're cracking down on people and actually taxing them on that business. But that's a bad solution for the vast majority of digital nomads now. They still think it is, because you read blog posts that are 10 years old and you think, oh, great idea. The only clients I have right now that still have companies in those jurisdictions are people that do business in Asia. Full stop.
If you enjoyed this clip and want to watch more like it, click here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.